Picture this: late afternoon sunlight drifting across a quiet room, dust floating upward through warm golden beams. The world outside remains loud and relentless, but inside this small pocket of stillness, something rare appears: space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to question why modern discipline feels like a battle you keep losing. We're told to grind harder, push further, force ourselves into action. But many people end up exhausted, resentful, and locked in the same repeating loop. It's like wrestling with your own shadow. The harder you fight, the more drained you become. Maybe the problem isn't your willpower. Maybe it's the entire philosophy behind how you approach discipline. Life today is a storm. Notifications, pressure, obligations, and settled demands that pull your attention in every direction. It's easy to feel like you're reacting to everything and choosing almost nothing. But what if inner strength isn't a war? What if it's a return? A shift from fighting yourself to understanding yourself? In this episode, we uncover 5 ancient laws drawn from Stoicism, existential philosophy, and modern psychology. They're not hacks. They're timeless principles for building a steady mind, calm, grounded, and unshakable. Strength that doesn't need to shout, strength that simply stands. And today, you begin learning how to cultivate it from within. Throughout history, the world has always been chaotic, uncertain, unpredictable, filled with pressures beyond anyone's control. Marcus Aurelius confronted war and plague. Seneca faced political turmoil. Epictetus endured life as a slave. Yet these thinkers asked the same questions you face today. How do I stay grounded? How do I remain calm? How do I build discipline without breaking myself? Their answers weren't about force, they were about clarity, seeing what truly belongs to you and what does not. These 5 ancient laws of inner strength are self-ownership, deliberate solitude, aligned action, crafted purpose, and the inner citadel. Each is a pillar that supports a life of focus, resilience, and calm confidence. You're not here to become more rigid. You're here to become more aligned. The people who grow strongest aren't those who push the hardest, but those who move with intention, those who master the inner world rather than chase control over the outer one. This journey is about stepping away from self-punishment and embracing self-governance. You are learning to redirect your energy toward what matters and to live rooted in calm, clarity, and meaning. Now, let's step into the first of these laws, the one that shapes everything else: the law of self-ownership. The law of self-ownership begins with a profound truth. You govern your inner world, not the world outside, not the chaos of circumstance, but your thoughts, your interpretations, your responses. This law is the shift from living reactively to living deliberately. It asks you to stop drifting through inherited habits and step into your life with awareness. Heidegger described how people fall into living as the they, absorbed by society's expectations. Without noticing, you inherit other people's beliefs about what matters, what success means, what you should pursue. The Stoics understood this too. Epictetus taught that real freedom comes not from controlling the external world, but from mastering your own choices and judgments. Modern psychology mirrors this with the concept of an internal locus of control. When you believe your choices shape your life more than external forces, you grow more resilient, decisive, and focused. Inner peace increases, anxiety decreases, strength becomes a natural result. Self-ownership begins with noticing your patterns. When you catch yourself reacting automatically, ask, is this mine? Is this thought truly my belief? Does this emotion come from me or from an expectation I inherited? This question marks the beginning of true inner power. Let's ground the law of self-ownership in real life. Think of a recent moment when you felt frustrated. Traffic, delays, someone's tone, a message left unanswered. You felt resistance rise, not because of what happened, but because your mind judged it shouldn't have happened. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." The meaning you attach becomes the experience you feel. If you believe the world must bend to your expectations, you will suffer. But if you adjust your expectations, you reclaim calm. Self-ownership doesn't mean ignoring emotions. It means understanding them. When irritation surfaces, pause. Look at the thought behind it. Ask whether the event truly deserves power over your inner state. Modern neuroscience shows that reframing your interpretation rewires emotional pathways. Your mind becomes more flexible, less reactive, more resilient. You learn to respond instead of react. This law lays the foundation for all inner strength, owning what is yours, releasing what is not. Now we step into the second law, the space where self-ownership deepens and clarity takes root, deliberate solitude. The law of deliberate solitude. In a world overflowing with stimulation, solitude has become rare. Not because we lack time, but because we've forgotten how to be alone. We fill every quiet moment with noise, scrolling, podcasts, entertainment, anything to avoid meeting our own thoughts without distraction. Yet solitude, when chosen deliberately, is not emptiness. It is presence, the presence of yourself. Thoreau went to Walden Pond not to escape life, but to encounter it clearly, without the interference of noise. Seneca wrote about retreating into himself to regain perspective. Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by war and duty, insisted that the mind possesses its own quiet inner retreat, a place no chaos can disturb unless you allow it in. Modern neuroscience supports this. Silence reduces cortisol. Stillness activates the parts of the brain responsible for reflection, identity, and insight. When you remove external noise, inner clarity sharpens. Without solitude, your mind becomes a mirror of the world's chaos. With it, your mind becomes a compass. Deliberate solitude isn't isolation, it's intentional reconnection with your values, your direction, and the deeper layers of yourself. Strength doesn't grow in constant motion. It grows in pauses, in the quiet, in the still moments where your inner world finally has room to breathe. You don't need a cabin in the woods to practice deliberate solitude. You need pockets of intentional quiet. 5 minutes before your day begins, a slow walk without headphones, a quiet moment in the car after arriving somewhere, a break in the afternoon where you set your phone aside and simply breathe. Your mind will resist at first. It's used to constant stimulation. Silence may feel like discomfort, boredom, or restlessness, but stay with it. What feels like discomfort is often clarity beginning to surface. The thoughts you've avoided now have space to be heard, and in that space, self-awareness begins to grow. One of the strongest tools you can bring into solitude is journaling, not as a task, but as a companion, a place to empty your thoughts, trace patterns, ask questions, and observe your inner life. Seneca described journaling as a way to examine the day and return to yourself. Modern therapists describe it the same way. Start small. Commit to one moment of intentional solitude each day. No noise, no input, just you, your breath, and your mind. Over time, you'll notice that these moments become grounding points, anchors that help you navigate everything else with more calm, clarity, and resilience. Solitude prepares you for the next law, aligning your actions with who you truly want to be.
The law of aligned action. Once you've learned to own your inner world and create space for clarity, you reach the third law, the law of aligned action. This law bridges who you are today with who you want to become. It's the movement of intention into reality. The moment values become behaviors. Epictetus gave his students a simple framework. First, decide who you want to be. Then do what that person would do. Stoic discipline was never about punishment. It was about integrity, acting in alignment with your chosen principles. If you value courage, act with courage. If you value health, behave like someone who values health. If you value wisdom, commit to learning. The gap between intention and action is where most people get lost. They know what they want, but wait for motivation or perfect conditions. But aligned action doesn't require intensity. It requires consistency. Modern neuroscience tells us that every repeated action strengthens a neural pathway. You are not just building habits, you are building identity. And here is your first subtle CTA, woven naturally and cinematically. If messages like this help you think differently about discipline and inner strength, consider subscribing. We're building a community grounded in growth and daily alignment. Aligned action begins small. It's not about transforming your life overnight. It's about taking one honest step in the direction of your values today.
To practice aligned action, start with what the Stoics called training in little things. Make your bed. Drink a glass of water mindfully. Put your phone away for a short period. Read a few pages of a challenging book. Complete one small task you've been avoiding. These aren't trivial acts. They're declarations, proof that you can follow through. Small aligned actions generate momentum. Momentum builds trust in yourself. Trust becomes confidence. Confidence becomes identity, and identity becomes destiny. When your daily actions align with your values, inner conflict fades. You stop wrestling with yourself. You stop bargaining with your intentions. Discipline becomes easier, not because the tasks change, but because you change. You're no longer fighting impulses. You're following the path of the person you've chosen to become. Aligned action is how the inner world shapes the outer world. Each small choice is a vote for your future self, a vote for clarity over chaos, purpose over drift, meaning over distraction. And now, with the foundation of aligned action in place, we move to the fourth law, crafted purpose, the why that guides the entire journey. The law of crafted purpose. The fourth law, the law of crafted purpose, answers a question every generation has wrestled with. Why am I doing any of this? Many people think purpose is something they must discover, like a hidden treasure. But the ancient philosophers understood something deeper. Purpose is crafted, shaped by deliberate engagement with life. Seneca wrote, "If a man knows not to which port he sails, no wind is favorable." Without a direction, even hard work becomes drift. Without a chosen purpose, the world chooses one for you. Heidegger described purpose as care, not worry, but meaningful engagement. It's the active choice of what you devote yourself to. A life without purpose isn't empty, it's scattered, pulled apart by impulses, distractions, and other people's expectations. Modern psychology confirms what the philosophers knew. People with a strong sense of purpose live longer, recover faster, and navigate life's hardships with far greater resilience. Purpose is the compass that transforms obstacles into stepping stones. It influences motivation, emotional stability, and long-term well-being. Crafting purpose begins with attention, noticing what energizes you, what challenges you in meaningful ways, what problems you feel drawn to solve. Your purpose doesn't need to be grand, it needs to be true, something that aligns your actions, emotions, and identity into a coherent story. Purpose isn't waiting for you. You build it, one choice at a time. To begin crafting your purpose, start with 3 questions. First, what activities make you lose track of time? These experiences point to your natural passions, things you could spend years learning without boredom. Second, what challenges or injustices in the world make you feel a spark of responsibility? This reveals what you care about. Third, how can what you love intersect with what serves others? Purpose is rarely self-contained. It becomes meaningful through contribution. The Japanese concept of ikigai describes this intersection beautifully. What you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can sustain. Your purpose lives where these elements overlap. But it won't emerge fully formed. It emerges through action, through trying, reflecting, adjusting, and trying again. The Stoics believed purpose was less about ambition and more about virtue. Purpose meant acting with integrity in whatever role you hold: parent, worker, creator, friend, citizen. Modern psychology agrees. Meaning is built through small acts that feel aligned with who you want to become. Don't wait for clarity. Move toward it. Choose a direction that feels true and take one step. Notice the feedback, your emotions, your energy, your growth. Adjust your course. Let your purpose evolve naturally, shaped by engagement with life, not the pressure of perfection. Now we enter the final law, the one that protects all others, the law of the inner citadel. The law of the inner citadel is the crown of all the principles you've learned. It's the practice of protecting your peace, of building an inner fortress no chaos can breach. Marcus Aurelius, facing war, plague, betrayal, and unbearable loss, wrote that the mind makes of itself what it chooses. His external world was turbulent. His inner world was something he cultivated intentionally. The inner citadel is not emotional suppression. It's emotional sovereignty. It's the clarity to see that events themselves are neutral. Only your interpretation gives them weight. When something disturbs you, Aurelius said, the disturbance comes not from the event, but from your judgment of it. And this judgment can be changed any time. In our era of constant outrage, comparison, and information overload, your inner citadel is more essential than ever. Without it, you are pulled by every impulse, reaction, and opinion. With it, you become steady, able to navigate storms without losing your center. This law requires daily practice, protecting your attention, choosing what influences enter your mind, setting boundaries with negativity and noise, returning to the present moment, where your real power exists. The citadel is built brick by brick, with awareness, intention, and the consistent choice to stay grounded. Building your inner citadel begins with mindful consumption. Treat information like food. You wouldn't eat something spoiled just because it's nearby. Yet many people consume emotional junk without question. Constant news alerts, social comparisons, endless criticism. What enters your mind shapes how you feel. Choose wisely. Next, learn to respond rather than react. When something challenges you, pause, breathe. Create a moment of space between the event and your response. In that space, you reclaim your power. It allows reason to enter before emotion takes over. This is not detachment, it's mastery. Finally, strengthen your citadel with gratitude and perspective. Each night, reflect not on what went wrong, but on what sustained you. Seneca wrote that true happiness comes from appreciating what is present without anxious dependence on the future. Gratitude doesn't ignore difficulty, it reveals the strength you already possess. And now, as the citadel rises, we approach the final lesson, the integration of everything you've learned. We've explored 5 ancient laws that each hold power on their own, but their true strength appears only when they work together. Self-ownership gives you the foundation. Solitude gives you clarity. Aligned action gives you momentum. Crafted purpose gives you direction. And the inner citadel gives you protection. When you integrate these laws into your life, discipline stops feeling like a struggle. It becomes a natural expression of who you are. Think of your inner world like a landscape. Self-ownership is the ground you stand on, solid, intentional, rooted in personal responsibility. Solitude is the clearing in the woods where your mind breathes. Aligned action is the path you carve each day, one small step at a time. Purpose is the horizon toward which your path leads. And the inner citadel is the shelter you build, a place of clarity that remains steady no matter what storms pass overhead. Integration isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. When your values, actions, and thoughts move in the same direction, life feels less like a battle and more like a flow. Modern psychology calls this internal coherence, when your behaviors match your intentions, and your intentions match your deeper beliefs. People who live this way feel less stress, less doubt, and more meaning. Integration, a life of daily strength. We've explored 5 ancient laws that each hold power on their own, but their true strength appears only when they work together. Self-ownership gives you the foundation. Solitude gives you clarity. Aligned action gives you momentum. Crafted purpose gives you direction. And the inner citadel gives you protection. When you integrate these laws into your life, discipline stops feeling like a struggle. It becomes a natural expression of who you are. Think of your inner world like a landscape. Self-ownership is the ground you stand on, solid, intentional, rooted in personal responsibility. Solitude is the clearing in the woods where your mind breathes. Aligned action is the path you carve each day, one small step at a time. Purpose is the horizon toward which your path leads, and the inner citadel is the shelter you build, a place of clarity that remains steady no matter what storms pass overhead. Integration isn't about perfection, it's about alignment. When your values, actions, and thoughts move in the same direction, life feels less like a battle and more like a flow. Modern psychology calls this internal coherence, when your behaviors match your intentions and your intentions match your deeper beliefs. People who live this way feel less stress, less doubt, and more meaning. Inner strength is never built all at once. It is built daily, through small choices that accumulate into a grounded, resilient identity. As you move forward, the question becomes not just what are the 5 laws, but how do I live them? Philosophy becomes powerful only when it becomes embodied, felt in your routines, choices, and responses. Living the laws means returning to them each day, using them as checkpoints, lenses, and guides. When you feel pulled by comparison or pressure, return to self-ownership. Is this thought truly mine? When your mind feels crowded, return to solitude. Where is my moment of quiet today? When you drift into procrastination, return to aligned action. What small step reflects who I want to become? When you feel directionless, return to purpose. What am I moving toward, and why does it matter to me? When life becomes chaotic, return to the inner citadel. What part of this is within my control? This cycle is how wisdom becomes identity. Over time, these questions become instinctive, guiding you naturally toward clarity and resilience. You begin to feel anchored, grounded, and capable of navigating challenges with a steady mind. Here is your main CTA, woven gently into the narrative. If this message has added clarity or strength to your day, consider subscribing to join this community of intentional growth. Together, we build discipline through understanding, not self-punishment. The 5 laws are ultimately about living with alignment, not perfection. Alignment. A life where your actions reflect your values, where your thoughts reflect your intentions, where your emotions reflect your wisdom instead of your impulses. This is the quiet transformation that changes everything. Seneca wrote that life is long if you know how to use it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Viktor Frankl wrote that a person can endure almost any how if they have a why. All of these ideas weave seamlessly into the 5 laws. But the greatest transformation happens when you realize this: inner strength is not built by fighting yourself. It's built by understanding yourself, by becoming a better steward of your inner world, by noticing your reactions, shaping your choices, and crafting your days with intention and clarity. As you continue this journey, remember that these laws are companions, not demands. They don't force you into discipline. They reveal the discipline already inside you, waiting to be shaped and directed. Now we arrive at the final stretch, integrating everything into one simple, lasting invitation. As we move into the final parts of this episode, imagine everything you've learned not as separate teachings, but as threads of the same fabric. When woven together, they create a mindset capable of meeting life with clarity and calm strength. But integration requires something subtle: patience. True inner change, and the discipline that grows from it, doesn't erupt suddenly. It unfolds. Start by observing yourself with honesty, not judgment. Notice when you give your power away. Notice when solitude calls but you choose distraction. Notice when aligned action feels difficult, when resistance appears right before growth. Notice when purpose feels distant, or when your citadel feels shaken. These moments aren't failures, they are signals, indicators of where your next step is. Inner strength begins with awareness, but it deepens with compassion. The Stoics weren't cold or unfeeling. They valued clarity over self-criticism. Modern psychology echoes this. People grow faster when they pair discipline with self-understanding. Harshness shuts the door. Curiosity opens it. As you step into the next phases of your life, treat each law as a quiet guide, a whisper, a reminder. Step by step, breath by breath, you will build a life anchored in presence and purpose. This isn't a quick transformation, it's a steady ascent. The laws begin to work on a deeper level when you apply them to moments of difficulty. When someone criticizes you, self-ownership reminds you to examine your interpretation, not their tone. When you feel overwhelmed, solitude guides you to pause and return to your breath. When procrastination tempts you, aligned action encourages a single small step. When uncertainty rises, purpose offers perspective. When chaos appears, the inner citadel offers calm. This is where your mindset truly shifts from reacting to choosing, from resisting to aligning. You stop seeing discipline as a force you impose on yourself and start seeing it as a natural outcome of clarity. And clarity grows every time you slow down, reflect, and return to these principles. Life will never stop being unpredictable, but unpredictability is no longer a threat when your inner world becomes a steady foundation. Stoicism teaches that the ultimate freedom is choosing your response. Psychology teaches the same truth, and your own experience will soon confirm it too. Every moment becomes training. Every challenge becomes an invitation. Every day becomes a chance to build, not dramatically, but deliberately. Let's gather everything in one place. The law of self-ownership teaches you to claim responsibility for your thoughts and reactions. The law of deliberate solitude clears mental space so you can hear your own voice. The law of aligned action helps you turn values into habits. The law of crafted purpose gives you direction. And the law of the inner citadel protects the peace you build. Together, these laws form a blueprint for a grounded, intentional life. A life defined not by chaos, but by clarity. Not by reaction, but by response. Not by force, but by alignment. And here, gently, is your final CTA. If this episode has supported your growth today, thank you for being here. Consider subscribing and becoming part of this community of deliberate, thoughtful living. Your presence helps shape a space dedicated to clarity, wisdom, and inner strength. These teachings aren't meant to stay as ideas, they're meant to be lived. You carry them with you now, into your choices, your reflections, your actions, and your presence in the world. So now, after exploring these 5 ancient laws, everything comes down to something simple. Choose one. Start small. Begin quietly. You don't need a grand transformation. You need one aligned decision. Choose one law that resonated with you most. If it's self-ownership, begin by noticing your interpretations today. If it's solitude, give yourself 5 minutes of quiet. If it's aligned action, complete one task without negotiation. If it's purpose, reflect on what direction feels true. If it's the inner citadel, practice one moment of pause before reacting. Strength is not intensity. Strength is continuity. The Stoics understood it, psychology understands it, and now you can begin living it. Inner strength is not something you force. It is something you build with patience, clarity, and intention. You are not meant to fight yourself. You are meant to guide yourself. You are meant to return to the steady voice within again and again until it becomes your home. Thank you for spending this time with me. Go forward with courage, with clarity, and with a mind anchored in calm strength. Your ascent has already begun.